Hello artists and welcome to Drawing Level F! Woohoo! This is one of my favorite medias to work with, so let's get started. Here in front of me I have my experiment sheet in my sketchbook, and then I've put my name on it, and then I've circled drawing and put level F. Today though, you are going to put it off to the side. You will tape it in later. Let's take a look at our levels sheet to see what our last level has in store here. Clear it up just a bit. It says I can create using watercolor pencils. I can plan out artwork for subject and for color use. Ooh, and then I can add water from the background to the foreground. I can wait for drying time and not rush adding water. I can make objects appear 3D, and I can add color to the whole picture plane. All right, that sounds like a lot, but it is super fun. This is the level F drawing bucket. Inside you're going to find that there are white pieces of paper. You are going to need 2. Then you are going to need a cup of water. You're going to see that there are watercolored pencils. You are going to notice that they are slightly different. They look like a colored pencil, but look, there's a paintbrush there. That's how you know it's a watercolor paintbrush. We need to make sure colored pencils and watercolored pencils stay apart, that they end up in the right home. Then I'm also going to find paintbrushes, my small, medium, and large paintbrushes in there. All right, on your first piece of paper, we are going to do some experimenting first. So what I've done here is I've created, using a colored pencil, one of those fun tornadoes where I start darker and then get lighter towards the bottom. I've done another tornado, but I've mixed 2 colors. I did the blue in the center on top of the green here, and then got even lighter as I went down. And then I have just a swatch of color, a line, and I have 2 colors that are just right next to each other. They are not on top of each other. All right, when I go ahead and do my watercolor, I want to make sure, I like to use the smaller brushes, but if I'm doing a really large area, I could do a larger brush. And then I'm going to, when I dip it in my water, I am going to wipe it off on the side. I don't want a ton of water getting on there and making everything bleed. So I'm just going to do my swatch of color here. Ooh, I'm noticing that it does spread farther than my swatch. So it spreads farther than my swatch. I'm going to go ahead and wash out my brush, make sure I'm getting the excess water off. I'm going to do a nice controlled line. Ooh, it didn't bleed that much. That is great. I know I can do that now. I'm going to go ahead and do my tornado next, I think. The areas that it's darker, that I added more color at the top, I added more pressure, are going to be darker. And then as I work my way down, it is going to get lighter. And just like you saw with those blenders from the last couple levels, you can keep going. It's just depending upon where you want to stop. All right, I'm going to try that again. Get my excess water off here. Darker at the top. Let's see what happens when I just mix the 2 colors. Ooh, that's a pretty blue-green. And then it's going to go all the way down to blue. There it is. Ooh, that's really pretty. All right. When I'm adding 2 colors next to each other, if I'm painting them, then here's what happens if I don't wait for it to dry. I'm going to go ahead and paint my red. And oh no, it's starting to bleed into my yellow. You can kind of see it right there. It's starting to bleed into my yellow because my yellow was wet. So I need to make sure that I'm controlling where I put the water and I'm not rushing so that my colors don't mix where I don't want them. All right. And the next thing you're going to do is we're going to create a 3-dimensional sphere. I've taken just one of the tracers at the Drawing Center, and I've just gone ahead. It's so much easier to draw circles when they're planned out for you. And I've just traced with a pencil the biggest circle in the bunch, What we're going to do is, we know from our last experiment that when we have a light source, the area closest to the light source is going to be lighter, and the area farthest away from the light source is going to have a shadow and it's going to be darker. So I'm going to go ahead and do a greenish one here, and I'm going to start off with a very light yellow. So I have a light green, dark green, and a yellow, because I know that yellow, when it mixes with light green, will make a lighter green. When I start, I cannot just go back and forth and back and forth. I have to follow the line. I know that a sphere is curved when I touch it and hold it. So I'm actually going to start with a center line. This is where my lightest point is going to be, right up here. So I'm going to leave the center white, because my watercolor pencils, when I use the water later, it will bleed out. All right, and then I'm just going to go ahead and get lighter. I'm going to keep following that curve. As I'm getting farther away from it, I can push a little harder. Remember, it's easier to add more color than to take away color. It's easier to add more color in pencil than it is to take away. I'm going to go part way down here with this yellow and intermix it with my green. All right, now I'm going to go back up here. Rolling pencils. Whew. And then I'm going to go ahead and go in lightly, very lightly with this green, because I want it to be a super light green here. And then I'm also going to make a mark here on the edge with my green pencil here to kind of show how it dips off the other side. And I'm going to keep going. As I'm getting further away, I'm adding more and more green, and going ahead and getting darker. I can start to push a little lighter. I want to make sure I'm getting those edges so I have a nice clean crisp edge here. Tracing over those. And for the sake of movie magic, you're going to go a lot slower than this, but Mrs. Nichols is going to go pretty fast through here so that we can look at other things. Okay, and now I'm going to grab my darkest green. I am going to start lightly on top of the light green, and then as I get further down again, I am pushing harder. I'm adding more pressure, taking those skills I've learned from the last drawing videos, my last levels, and applying them to my next level. And I'm going to actually take a black pencil here, black colored pencil. I'm just going to add a small little line here for the very darkest part. I don't need very much though. All right, when I feel like I have my plane completely colored, so I have my object all the way colored, I have as much color as I think I want in it, now I'm going to go ahead and do the water. If I didn't add enough color in places, I would have to wait for this to dry before I go back and fix it. All right, get this, I've wiped off my color. I'm going to start with the lightest color first, and I'm going to start really wide around my white area right up here. And then I'm going to follow, look, my brush is also following those beautiful curvy lines that I made. I want to make sure that I can see those curvy lines that I made. Spent all that time making sure that I curved it all around. I want to make sure I keep them. I want to make sure I can see them. You're going to see that when you're doing this, some of these lines are going to stay. You're going to be able to see the watercolor pencil, the lines from the pencil still. That's okay. That lets people that are looking at your artwork know that you didn't do this with just watercolor. No, you did it with watercolored pencil. So some of those lines are very good texture. It lets the medium be the media. And then as I'm going down, I'm making sure I'm being nice and controlled around the edges of my sphere here. Now it's really starting to turn into a sphere, and I'm going to notice here when I get towards the end here, this black's going to spread out a little bit. I don't want to just go straight up now. I want to make sure I'm intentional where I'm spreading that black out for that darkest part of that shadow. I'm going to wash out my brush here and get the middle. Oof. This is looking pretty good. Then I can go through with my water and kind of spread things out a little bit if I want. If I don't want the dark to go up too far, I need to make sure I'm washing out my brush and then getting a nice, fresh, clean brush again. Make sure. I don't want all that green up there. I want this to be nice, fresh, clean, just like that. All right. If you haven't already paused the video to do your experiment, you should go ahead and do that. What I have here, my next step here is my mini artwork. That's step 2. That's going to be for my second paper. I want to take a minute though, and I want to go ahead and draw it into my sketchbook. I want to make a quick sketch of my plan to know what I'm doing. All right. What I have here is I'm doing a planet scene, and I've just taken a tracer to help me out here, and I've gone ahead and traced them. Since I'm looking at this in a 3-dimensional way, I want to make sure that my circles on my planets, or my spheres on my planets, the ones that's closer to me is the biggest, and the one that is farthest away is the smallest. And then because I know that these are going to have shadows on it, I'm going to go ahead and add a little line here with my pencil, lightly, very lightly, of where my shadow would go. My shadow this time is going to be curved. It's going to curve around here, kind of come off the bottom. I'm seeing my lights kind of going this way, so I'm going to make sure that and this shadow is actually going to go off. And the bigger the object, the bigger the shadow. So this one's going to have a pretty small one. This one might need to be just a little bigger. Okay. What I've already gone here to do is, one of my things on my level sheet is that I can add color to the whole picture plane. So, and then I can paint from the background to the foreground. I'm going to do that because I don't want my colors to bleed together in ways I don't want them. And also, if I paint the foreground before I paint the background, look, my hand's going to get in the way, and I'm going to smear my beautiful work, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to paint from the top to the bottom. The first thing I'm going to do here is get all my colors in. I want to make sure that I get all my colors in. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing my planet. I know that things that are closer to me are going to be brighter and more colorful. So the part of the planet that's the closest to me is going to be this beautiful, bright, brilliant orange here. This beautiful, bright, brilliant orange. And I'm actually going to add in a little bit of yellow here into this to make this a nice crisp color. I'm pressing kind of hardish with my orange and kind of letting my colors work for me. And then as I get further back here, I'm going to make my path through here. I'm going to start to get lighter. My colors are going to be lighter. Things that are farther away from me are fuzzier. They are harder to see. So again, my tornado technique, but the whole picture plane, not just parts of it. So light, medium, dark, crisp, bright. And then adding those other colors in there is going to help make that foreground a lot brighter, a lot crisper. And we're going to pretend that I did this the whole planet really, really neatly. And then I added in all my lights. Maybe I'm adding in a little bit of yellow to my medium in here. This just makes it more interesting. All right. Then, once I have that done, I would go ahead and start doing one of my spheres here. I'm going to start with, now I don't have to do just all the same color. I'm actually going to start and I'm going to do a bluish, greenish, tealish color. And I'm going to, my light source is somewhere over here. So again, I'm going to start with my yellow, work my way out following my curves. Following all my curves as I'm working down. I want it to transition into green. I know that my colors are going to be cleaner the closer I am, the farther away I am. So I'm going to go ahead and finish out this sphere. Alright, I've gone ahead and I've finished out my spheres. I want you to notice that this one has the most color and the most texture, and as we're getting farther back in the picture plane, or as we're getting closer to the background, this is all just one color because the colors are going to be blurrier. There's not going to be as much detail. Alright, once I have done that to create my shadows here, I'm going to need whatever my background color was. So in this case, it was my orange planet. I'm just going to put just in a little bit of orange here. And then I'm going to take just a little tiny bit of black, and I'm just going to, oh no, the lights went off. Hold on. There we go. And I'm just going to add the tiniest bit of black here into my picture plane, and I'm going to leave the rest of that shadow blank. All right, now that I've added, we're going to pretend that I added color to my whole picture plane. Now I have to wait for dry time and not rush adding the water. And then we talked about how we're going to paint the background first. So that would be this area back here, the background. I'm going to paint all this first because I don't want my planet to bleed into my background. So I'm going to go ahead and paint that, and I'm noticing that might be a little bit of a small brush for that. So I'm going to grab a bigger brush. There it is. I'm going to grab a bigger brush. And I'm going to go ahead and start painting all the way up to my plane here. Then I would have to, once I get this all painted, I would have to wait for it to dry before I worked on the planet. The planet would be the next thing that I would work on. So, otherwise my colors would bleed together. So, then what I'm going to do is after I have let my planet dry, then I can work on my spheres and the shadows. This might mean that I might have to wait a couple days, that I might have to wait for it to dry on the drying rack. And then again, I would go through and I would do my spheres, my background, my spheres, my objects, my shadows. I would go ahead and do those just very nicely, nice transitions, get some of those out of the way. And then your shadow, let's take a look at that as our very last thing. With this shadow, you're going to just pull the black to make more of a gray. You're just going to pull it right up next to the edge of the sphere here, and you're just going to pull it. I might need to wash off my brush if I feel like I'm getting a little bit of gray too far away and it's not fading how I want it to. That orange is going to help keep it so that it looks like it's still on the orange planet, but then we're going to have a little bit of a shadow. You did it! You made it to level F! Happy creating!